video for the Festool LR32 series that I'm doing. Just going to dive right into it. Remember, I'm not showing you how to set up and calibrate the LR32 with your guide rail and your router. So make sure you have that already done. And in the second video, I went over the end stops. So my end stops are already set up for my 704mm panel with my 16 up and out on the end stops. And that's guaranteeing me 704mm between the two end stops. So I told you in the second video that I was going to use the LR32 in this video. So let's get to it. With my panel secured to the MFT table and my end stops at 16 up and out on the rail, they fit perfectly in between my panel. I need to set up the stop rods. Now, the front row of holes on your European style of cabinetry, that location is centered at 37mm from the front edge of your cabinets. That's the standard location for that front row of holes. And that's going to allow for the door hardware to work properly for your upper cabinets and for your base cabinets. That's going to help you locate the proper spacing for your drawer glides. So I want to set the stop rod to scale up to 37mm. And then I'm going to attach it to the guide rail. Now I know that my end stops touch the top and the bottom of my panel, so I want to ensure and make sure that the pin on the stop rods touches the front of my cabinet. And with the pin touching the front of my cabinet, that ensures me that, one, my rail is going to run parallel to the front of my cabinet. And two, with the stop rod set at 37mm, my front row of holes is going to be centered at 37mm parallel to the front. Then you want to clamp down the guide rail to your workpiece. And that's to ensure that the rail doesn't move while you're running the router along, drilling out the holes. Now that my rail is clamped to my workpiece, I can remove the stop rods. Now I want to locate where I'm going to drill the holes out. You could, if you wanted to, drill all these holes out, but I don't think that looks good. I want a clean, professional look. And it's a good practice before you build your cabinets to have all the hardware that you plan on using for that project. So for me, I have a hinge plate and a hinge. It's a two-part hinge. And the style and the way that I build my cabinets, I want to come down 80mm from the top and from the bottom of my cabinet. And I want to locate that 80mm hole for my first hole for the hinge plate. And here's why I want to do that. So throughout the building process of the cabinet, I want to maintain my true 32 measurement. My panel's 704mm. And my plywood is 19mm thick. What I don't want to do is install my top and my bottom to the top and the bottom of my sides. That would add 38mm to my overall height, taking me out of my true 32 measurement. What I want to do is attach the tops and the bottoms to the inside of the cabinet. That's going to maintain my true 32 height of 704mm. So by measuring down 80mm for the first location for my hinge plate hole, if I was to go up just one more hole on the guide rail, you can see how that's going to raise the hinge up and take it closer to the top and to the bottom of the cabinet. And it just bunches it all up here, and it doesn't look very good. So by using that first hole at 80mm, it's going to drop the hinge down and give me plenty of room for the hinge to work up top. And it just looks more balanced, and it's not all cluttered up on the top or the bottom of the cabinet. So I measured from the top down 80mm for my first hole for the hinge plate. Now that I know that the third hole, 1, 2, 3. The third full hole is 80 millimeters. I'll mark that using a red dry eraser marker. And since these holes in the guide rail are spaced every 32 millimeters apart, and the holes on my hinge plate are spaced 32 millimeters apart, I know that I could use the fourth hole. Those are the holes I'm going to use for my hinge plate. And since my panel is in increments of 32 and it fits perfectly between the end stops on the guide rail, I can come down here and count third and the fourth hole for my bottom hinge plate. And now that I know, since this is an increment of 32, 704 millimeters divided by 32 is 22. So I have 22 holes here, which means that this 11th hole is the center of my panel. Now, this is the flexibility that you get with the LR32 system. You could drill out all the holes that you want. You could drill out a hole, skip a hole, do whatever you find appealing. For me, I like to come to that last hinge plate hole and come down 4 holes and mark for a cabinet or for the shelf, and then I'll come up 4 holes and I'll mark for the other adjustable shelf. And then I'll drill all these holes out right here. Now that I have my holes located where I want them, it's time to set up the OF 1400 router and set the depth of plunge and get ready to drill these holes out. Before I could drill out any of the holes, I already set the guide plate up with the center pin for the OF 1400 router, and I have the flush bottom 5mm bit installed. So now I need to set my depth of plunge. And to do that, I'm going to use the lowest turret. And the lowest turret, that represents the top of my work surface. And the depth rod, the bottom of the depth rod, that's going to represent the bottom of my bit. So I want to plunge the router down, tighten up the lock knob, and then take and loosen the depth lock so that the depth rod touches my turret. And I could zero out the pointer on the scale. I like to use these 6.3 by 13mm Euro screws to fasten all my hardware down to my cabinets. So I simply lift the depth rod and place the Euro screw in between the turret and the depth rod and lock down the depth lock. Now you can see on the scale that I have a 13mm depth of cut or plunge, and now I'm ready to install my dust hood, hook up the power and the hose to the OF 1400 and drill out all my holes. Okay, putting on my safety glasses and my hearing protection. I have the router set to the speed of 6, and I can use this window on the guide plate to look through and find my colored marks for my holes. Now I want to drill out the back roll of holes for my adjustable shelving. And in my method that I built this cabinet, you can see that I have 19 millimeters that my back panel's recessed in. And it's a 5mm back panel. And I still want my back roll of holes to be centered at 37 millimeters. I want that uniform to look. So to do that, I need to take 19 plus 5 plus 37 to get 61. So now I'm going to set the stop rod up at 61 millimeters. And again, I want to make sure that the pins on the stop rod, now they're going to touch the back of my cabinet. And again, all I need to do is worry about my adjustable shelving holes, which are my blue holes. Well, there you have it. Cabinet sides drilled out for my adjustable shelving and for my hinge plate accurately, precisely. And I hope you noticed that with the OF1400 hooked up to the dust extractor, the CT26, there's zero dust generated, so I have nothing to clean up. So stay tuned for the next video. I'm going to go over and explain the 35 millimeter cup hinge, how to set up the guide rail and go about drilling that out. That'll be the door for this cabinet. So please subscribe, stay tuned, and thanks for watching.
It's real good.